All right, ladies and gentlemen. Why not add more craziness to the last 2 weeks with 3-day weeks and now assemblies interrupting things? So yesterday, were we together yesterday? No, we weren't together yesterday, but second period was. Today, second period had part of the class missing because they were not sophomores. So I thought I had posted that. I think originally I posted the test was going to be moved to today, right? So this test that really should have been done last week is tomorrow. So if you've studied up and you didn't get that message, sorry about that. But the good news is then you got even another day to do it because of how convoluted everything was. And I'm always going to err, good or bad. I guess some of my colleagues and peers might say I'm too easy, but I'm always going to err on the side of making sure that I've done my part to make sure you can be successful. If you're not successful tomorrow after getting another day, what else can I do, right, Jaden? What else can I do? What else could I do? Fifth grade, it was 50-50. Remember that? Well, you're way beyond 50-50. You're like, I should be only like 30% of the reason, 25% of the reason you're successful in class. Does that make sense, Annie? I gave this big speech every year in fifth grade that, getting to be big boys and girls and teacher can't do everything for you. You're at a point where, how we like to make excuses. Well, the teacher, this. Did I ever tell you the story about when I tried to say that to my dad? Ever tell you that story? I didn't get the whole sentence out. Let's just put it that way. When I started to say the teacher, that's about the last thing I got out of my mouth before I remember looking up. Anyway, so not that I'm advocating that. I'm just saying in prior generations, that's kind of how it was. And that's just to say that you're responsible, right? You're not going to do well or not do well in my class because of me. It's on you. Right, Elise? All right. So what we're going to do today, since the test isn't until tomorrow, and we haven't gone over the crossword puzzle yet, right? How can I do that? How can I give you the test if I haven't gone over the crossword puzzle? I realized the crossword puzzle had some, there was an error with the 2-word thing. I thought we had that glitch fixed a long time ago. When I first started doing these, that would happen. So I guess it's on me. I don't know what I did different. So we'll try to fix those as we go. Remember how we do this? If I ask you a question, you can't just give me the answer. You guys say, hey, what's that got to do with what we've been studying? You ready? Number 5 across. Roosevelt's party. Yes. Somebody raise their hand. And it can't be the same time. Make a decision right now. You are going to participate in today's class. Roosevelt's party. Yes. Democrat. Is that important? Not really important, but it does kind of set a tone, though. I did say from the 1930s on that you'll see a pretty distinct difference between how each party views their role as leaders in government, right? So from the 30s, that shift in how America's attitude was towards government and how much government should, quote unquote, fix in our lives, especially economically. So the Democrat Party, whether you agree or not, has been more, quote unquote, liberal in that area with government taking care of things. And it all starts back in the 30s. Next one. The only thing to fear, according to Roosevelt in his inaugural address, in the midst of this economic crisis, this panic, which they didn't call it a panic, they didn't want anybody to panic, this depression, what did he say was the only thing we had to fear? Yes, fear. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That one line in that speech stands out in history then. What was he trying to say? What was Hoover and then FDR and then a lot of people in government trying to put a happy face on things, right? Trying to be, what's those 2 words that are opposites? Not pessimistic, but optimistic. And we talked about at the beginning of the whole lesson that pessimism kind of played a part and how long this depression went. Not a major part, but a little bit. If you can get people's confidence to be really down, how productive are they going to be? Unless you're really resilient, like the Lady Lions. Come on, you can come. Like you could be very pessimistic, and sometimes you just get inspired by something, and it all works out. Great job. Did you get to watch it? You were there?
No, we watched it.
You were watching me on YSN? All right. It was exciting. Those of you that didn't show up last night, seniors, it was an awesome thing. You had a team that hadn't won a game in 2 months. Their coach left, right? You talk to the girls, and senior girls in class, and they're the ones that carry the biggest burden because it's their last year. And if you had a scale of 1 to 10 as far as like optimism or morale, what would it be, like 1.1, something like that? I mean, we got some players in here. And so to see what happened last night, so you got these 3 seniors, it's their last game at Heartland, and they haven't won in 2 months. They're playing a team that's not awful. The other team's got like 8 wins. And they're a couple things. They're facing all of this pessimism, and the morale's really low. And then they come out and they're like, oh, we got a little excitement. And then the other team starts to pull away, and they're up by 9. And it would have been easy for everybody to say, well, here we go again. And then they come back, and then the other team starts to pull away, and like, okay, good job, girls. Good job. You gave it a good effort on senior night. And then you get, not only do they come back after all that's happened through the year and in that game, they come back twice from pretty big deficits and overtake the lead. And then on top of it all, how do they do it? Because the 3 seniors and 2 of the seniors that aren't typically like the leaders have 7 threes in between the 2 of them. It was pretty awesome. Because the one senior that everybody knows, Maddie's like the leader, leading scorer, whatever. She's like playing half the time on like 1.5 legs. So, she can't even do what she normally does. So it was just a pretty awesome thing. So good job, Lady Lions. And then all the contributions. It wasn't just those seniors. It was like it was an awesome thing. You should have been there. All right, where are we at? I don't know how I got off on that. Oh, optimism. Next, number 10. Nope, that's the answer, right? Not pessimistic, but optimistic is number 10 across. Number 16. What was the NRA symbol? By the way, it's not the National Rifle Association, right? What was their symbol for being a quote-unquote good business? Your business passes the test for being a good, patriotic business. You are going to get this sticker to put, this decal to put on your business to say you are a good, patriotic business. You are sacrificing for the whole. Your bottom line tells you you should not have this many workers. Your bottom line tells you that you need to cut back. But you're going to strive and do everything you can to maintain as many workers as you can and keep investing in your company, even though the future looks bleak. You get the Blue Eagle. It'd be nice if I had a copy of it in front of me, wouldn't it? Number 17. This is a word we use to describe a certain Tuesday, Thursday, October 24th, and a Tuesday, October 29th of 1929. Caleb? Black Thursday, Black Tuesday. Why? Because, black, the color of mourning, MOURNING, right? Depressed. It's a black day. They could have called it, I guess, Blue Thursday, Blue Tuesday, right? You got the blues because of that. And another way, you could have called it Red Thursday because everybody went dead. But it was more the doom and gloom, the like figuratively the death of the economic prosperity. Black Thursday, Black Tuesday. 18. A frightful radio broadcast. This is something that I put in there because, hey, if someone's talking to you about, remember that, what was it called? War of the Worlds broadcast, and you were like, what? There was such a thing? It was a big deal. Was it as big deal as some people, like when I was younger and I was taught about this? I was made to believe, like, I don't know, millions of people in New York City were like jumping out their windows and saying, this is it, this is the apocalypse because aliens have invaded the earth. I think that was exaggerated. I think there was a portion of people that turned on the radio that day, and they turned it on in the midst of this. And this Orson Welles was a great narrator and made everything so realistic. So they turn it on midway through, and they're hearing what's going on. They think, they didn't have any idea that this was a dramatic broadcast. They thought, turn on the radio, I'm getting the news. And they're getting this narration from Orson Welles that's telling them play by play what's happening. And the aliens have invaded, and people are being killed. And they're like, what? They couldn't go on the internet to see if it was true. Next. What's the next one? Somebody read it and answer it for me. Come on, take over. Don't be shy. Let's be interactive. Go ahead, Emily.
Eliminated some programs. Supreme Court.
Okay, so why is that in there? FDR. Okay, go ahead, Emily. Why is that on the crossword puzzle?
Well, FDR, like partisan field, he set up a lot of programs, but some of them didn't last very long.
Why wouldn't they? Why would the Supreme Court strike them down?
Was it because it was too much government control?
Okay, based on what? Just their opinion? How does the Supreme Court come to a decision that that's quote unquote too much government involvement? What are they basing that on? What are they basing that on? What's the Supreme Court based their decisions on? Well, they're supposed to. The Constitution, right? So the principles, the actual verbatim words of the Constitution and the principles that are espoused in the Constitution. Does this program, does the government doing this go against the principles outlined in the U.S. Constitution? And if the Supreme Court justices find that it does, boom, you can't do it. So what are these programs? These programs aren't something that FDR as president, remember, we don't have a king. FDR couldn't just say, hey, this is what I want done, now you go do it. No, that's not the way it works in America. We got rid of that. We threw that tyranny off 250 years ago, right? 245 years ago. So FDR, we call it FDR's New Deal. FDR, all he could do was get Congress to pass laws. So all of these programs we had with the New Deal, those are a result of Congress passing a law that was going to fund these ideas of FDR's. And if the Supreme Court, because either a group of people or a state government sued and said this isn't constitutional, then the Supreme Court would rule it unconstitutional and throw those programs out. So FDR wanted to do even more than he ended up doing. But it speaks to the checks and balances, the federalism that the United States of America created, where we have three branches, but then we also have three levels: local, state, and national government. And they all have their lane. And the national government, contrary to the world you're growing up in, according to our Constitution, the national government's lane doesn't just run right through the local and state lanes. They don't just, here's the local lane, here's the state lane, and the national government just like, hey, we'll just override all. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And thankfully, more so then than now, there was a Supreme Court that would say, put an end to things that weren't constitutional. Number 20, eliminate, number 23. What was the focus of the AAA? First of all, do you remember what it stands for? Somebody new? Say it.
Oh,
Cultural
just lost it, I'm sorry.
adjustment.
Oh,
What would start with A? Government program that would start with an A.
agency.
Administration. Okay, so that's got agency would too. What was the focus of it? Well, it's right there in the name, right? What was the focus of it, Sam? Okay, why? Why did the government feel that they had to have a program focusing on agriculture?
The farmers had lost a lot even before the crash, and then they were still losing
How were they losing?
because like the price of wheat went.
Drew, you paying attention? Or are you just studying facts for the test? Good. How were they losing?
Because like wheat went from $1.05.
Why?
to 99 cents a bushel because there's less demand.
Was there less demand? Or what's the other side? There's demand and then there's, what's the other word? Okay, so was there less demand? I mean, the population keeps increasing. There was less demand, but what was the overriding factor?
There was too much.
There was supply, right? There was a, what do you call that? Sort of S, surplus. There was an overwhelming surplus. We had all this technology that's been introduced into farming. You did have less demand because people didn't have enough, as much money, right? That's another economic principle. But the overwhelming problem was surplus. So according to this administration, what did they pay farmers to do?
Like not their crop.
Not only to not grow them, but imagine that you've sown your seed, you've raised a harvest, and then the government's going to pay you to do what? To plow them under. Is that insane? Sounds insane, doesn't it? Why did they do it? Because the farmers were not getting the price according to the market because of the surplus. Demand stays the same. If there's more stuff there, then they're not going to be able to sell it at the same price. People are going to say, oh, well, not enough. So they have to bring the price down. Well, if they bring the price down, they've already got all this money invested. How are they going to survive? They're going to lose money. Next. 26. What's this bonus force thing? What is that about? It was called the BEF, based on the AEF. So going back to World War I, what was the AEF? And what was that? It was simply the name given to our forces, right? The forces we sent to go fight in World War I, they were called by title, the American Expeditionary Force has arrived in Europe under the leadership of, if you get this one,
Blackjack Pershing.
under the leadership of General Pershing. And Americans coming into the war, and the war is soon going to be over because the doughboys have arrived. Anyway, so the war's over. There's promises made to those veterans about monies they're going to get down the line, right? They want their money now. So they form a march, like we hear about these days, people marching here and there on Washington, and they're demanding their money. It's hard times. And the government's like, well, you know, you're promised this down the line here. We can't really give it to you now. Well, we want it now. So they get like, you know, picture like the truckers up in Canada. You got a bunch of people descending on the Capitol, and they're just going to sit there. And they're going to make encampments. They're going to make little makeshift huts, and they're going to stay there and demand until they get paid. Well, at some point, after weeks, the government, Hoover, says, okay, we got to clear the streets. We're trying to negotiate with you. The government doesn't really have the money to pay you what you're demanding. You don't want to accept that. You don't want to leave. So he sends in literally the military, Douglas MacArthur. And in that standoff, the military trying to get them to leave, they won't leave. So then they got to start using force. And in the use of force, 2 American veterans get killed and 2 others seriously wounded. And that's on the headline of the news. That's going to look really bad for President Hoover, right? That bonus expeditionary force. 28, bank closures. Throughout, especially at the beginning of the Depression or at the beginning of his administration, FDR would declare a bank, somebody knew? Holiday. Like, instead of the bank just being closed on Monday because of Labor Day, we're going to declare this week as a bank holiday. The bank will not be open this week. Man, how many have ever been with their parents when you pull up to the bank and you got there just too late? I'm mad your parents might be, oh, I just missed it, closed now. Or last week with all the snow and the storm, and when the bank closed, and my wife was kind of happy because now she gets to come home. But then you think of like how many people like they actually needed to do bank business that day. It probably affected a lot of people, right? Very frustrating. So bank holidays, and the point was because so many people with the little bit of money they had, and if they all needed it at the same time, the bank can't handle that. So it gives banks time to recover. 29, blank bills. We could have put bills on the end of that, Dina. We could have put blankets on the end of that. What'd you put in there? Hoover bills. Who would be so mean to call them Hoover bills? What people?
The people that blame him, the homeless people.
Right. Because they have to build their own little shanty towns, right? Or they don't even have blankets. They're wearing rags, as they said in the video. People literally, you saw them laying there on benches. They don't have clothes. Their shoes. Then they talk about having to make their own shoes. So they don't have anything to cover up, so they use newspapers. Get all the newspapers thrown in the trash. Extra, read all about it. Okay, we read all about it. Now we do it with the newspaper. We throw it away. Hey, I could use that newspaper. I'll put like 5 layers of newspaper on me to try to stay warm. Hoover blankets. Why are they called that? Because, of course, Hoover got the blame. Who else you going to blame? Is it easier to blame one person or one small group or not? It is. You can focus your energy and your blame on one person. That's easy to do. And that happens all the time. People don't want to think too deeply, right? That's why we were on our Hoover apology tour. Next, number 30. A blank in every pot, in quotes. What do you think, Riley? It was actually the Hoover campaign slogan, 1928. Things are rolling. Hey, there's not only going to be a chicken in every pot, there's going to be 2 cars in every garage. Why wouldn't there be, right? America is prosperous and prospering more and more every day. So we're going to keep this going. Of course he is. Coolidge hands it over to Hoover. Calvin Coolidge. The business of America is business. And man, is business good. Hands off. Why would I interfere with what is going on? Hey, maybe there's some people, a small percentage of people saying, do you think the price of that should be that high? Be quiet. Yes, of course. And so there were people that were trying to warn, like we saw in the video. But who wants to listen to that? Who wants to listen to Debbie Downer when you're like, I'm making money hand over fist, right? I don't want to listen to Debbie Downer telling me I should stop. Thanks, Karen. Next. Did you guys get that? Number 1 down, set up to ensure bank deposits. One of FDR's programs was specifically to make sure that we wouldn't have this problem again where I got my savings in the bank, it's gone. What? The banks will lose the money too. So I got my money in my savings. I go to get it out. We don't have it. Okay, I get it. I might have to wait a few days, right? Then weeks. What happened to my money? Oh, the bank foreclosed. The bank went out of business. So FDR says, and again, not just FDR, Congress going along with them. We can never let that happen again. We've got to have a program where the federal government's going to ensure that when people put their money in the bank, because what's going to happen if they don't? They said it on the video. If people are not trusting that when they put their money in the bank, that it's going to be there when they go get it, what will they not do? Put it in the bank. Do you understand how that affects everybody? What if no one was saving their money and you wanted to buy a new car or a new house? And very few people have the wherewithal to just pay cash for that. What would happen if no one was saving? What's a bank do? What is a bank? What is a bank? How's a bank operate? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, it's a store. Stores up the money, and then if people need to borrow money, they go to the bank, right? The bank gives you interest for saving the money with them so they have money to lend out. Then when they lend it out, they charge a little higher interest to the people that are borrowing the money. That's not fair. Yes, it is, or else they wouldn't be a store, right? So they charge interest when you borrow the money. Everybody accepts that. You pay the interest back to the bank. The bank then can pay interest to the people that are saving. If you don't have people saving money, how does the bank loan the money? And if the bank doesn't loan the money, how are you buying these things that you want to have that you really can't afford right now? Remember, the whole world now, the country, not the whole, we're exaggerating, but there's a general movement here that people are just living on credit. Well, that credit's going to be gone because the banks don't have the money to lend. Yeah. Yes. Next, we close to time. CCC's focus. Noel, what was the focus of I won't make you memorize what it was, the Civilian Blank Corps. I just give it away if I said what the focus was. Conservation. Do you remember, Noel, what specific demographic they targeted to try to employ to do all of this conservation work? Right. Number 3 down. FDR's affliction, illness, ailment, affliction. What was FDR stricken with in 1921? Yes. Polio. And what does that do? What's ultimately, ultimately death, I guess, because over a long period of time, but what immediate symptom, right, paralysis. And he was paralyzed in his lower extremities. What was the Smoot-Hawley or Hawley-Smoot? What's that? That was one of many, but one of the larger, Ben? Tariffs. We've gone over many times what a tariff is. Number 6 down, the 21st Amendment repealed. Bella? Prohibition. Number 8 down. FDR was a Democrat. Hoover was a Republican. For a long time, America has been based on that two-party system. Number 9, the Blank Valley Authority. Yeah, Tennessee Valley Authority. What did they do? What was their purpose? Really? What was the purpose of the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority? First of all, their purpose, like all the other programs, was to provide jobs for people that didn't have jobs. Who's providing the job? The government. Where are they getting the money to do it? Well, taxes and having to borrow money themselves to pay for these things, but they got to do it. The government has to get involved. We got to give people jobs so they can feed their families. So we've got this Tennessee Valley Authority created. And what it's going to do, its main mission is to provide hydroelectric power to much of the South, going down the Tennessee River, and then it's going to get even bigger than that. Of course, since it started with the Tennessee River, that Tennessee Valley Authority is going to be a major, not only employer, but provider for hydroelectric power for a lot of people. Remember, this is the 1930s. There are a lot of people in the United States at that time, especially in the South, that wouldn't have had electricity in their homes, running water in their homes. So that provided a great need. Number 11 down, FDR's programs altogether. The alphabet agencies didn't fit. So what do we call them, Mackenzie? A New Deal. FDR says, okay, Hoover's been trying this certain way of doing things. I'm going to offer you a new deal. Here, you can, those cards you're holding in your hand, they're not good for you, are they? You can turn those cards in. I'm giving you a new deal. Or you can look at it this way. Here's the deal between the government and you, the citizen. The deal is that we will stay out of your business, right? You conduct yourself in a lawful way, and our job is to get out of your way so you can be prosperous. Well, here's a new deal. Here's a new deal. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. But things were so bad, people accepted that deal. What are you going to do? You got to feed your family, right? Next one. Weeby. Daring female pilot. Who was that pilot that said, I'm going to circumnavigate the world in my plane? Earhart. You say Earhart. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart, and disappeared. We didn't have the technology we have today with GPS and radar tracking, and disappeared. And if you look into Amelia Earhart, you'll hear conspiracy theories, like everything else, that, there's mystery around, like even Elvis. Like, there's not really much mystery with Elvis, but you can produce a conspiracy theory and say that since you didn't see Elvis, you sure Elvis died. Is he living in Argentina or something? Or Hitler? People do the same thing with Hitler. Number 13, the act creating pensions for the elderly. This is one of the things out of the Great Depression that I'm guessing that everybody in here knew this term before we started. This is the long-lasting, most enduring, you could say successful programs, at least for now, that came out of the Great Depression. It was the Social Security Act. Consumer blank was one cause of the Depression. Jaden? Debt. And we saw from the debt clock last week, was that up when you guys were in here?
Yeah.
It's not just government debt, it's our individual consumer debt that is out of control too. If you take all those things together, boy, somebody has to stand up. First of all, we the people have to stand up and demand somebody that is a strong enough leader to say, hey, listen, we're on the road to Hades, and if we don't turn this around, that's where we're headed. And the people have to realize that it might be short-term pain, but it would certainly be long-term gain, and that's the problem politically. Who's going to be the leader that says what we have to do to fix things is going to cause a little short-term pain? Nobody wants any pain, right? Nobody wants any suffering, any pain. Everybody wants everything they have already, and they want even more. So who's the politician that's going to say, we're going to have to cut back on this and cut back on that spending and take away that program that's helping people? But that's really the only way we're going to get out of it, unless we're willing to go all the way. Please. Next, FDR judicial attempt. FDR appointed, does anybody remember how many judges? He ended up appointing how many Supreme Court justices? Out of the 9, by the time he was done, there's only 9. He wanted to make it, there was an idea that, hey, maybe we should have 13 instead of 9. What's that called? Court packing. So he didn't get that established, but he did get how many? He nominated and got the Senate to confirm how many? Remember the numbers? By the time he was done, 5. He ended up with, by the time he was done, so out of the 9, 5 of them, by the time he was done being president, were his appointees. That might not sound like a big deal, but it kind of is. That means his way of thinking is going to dominate the court well past his presidency. That's that's a big thing with presidential elections. That was a big thing. When Trump first got elected in 2016, he already had the reputation of being crass, right? For mean tweets and all that stuff. And some people are like, what do we do here? I mean, we like his policies better, but man, he's so ignorant, or whatever. You know what people say about Trump and how he talks. But they voted for him anyway, because one of the reasons that some people were right on the line, like, what do I do here? He's going to be the one that's going to nominate Supreme Court justices. And if I believe in things like right to life and people being able to defend themselves with Second Amendment, I better make sure that the next president has people going to the Supreme Court. They're going to, when these cases come to the court, that they're going to vote in favor of the baby in the womb, or the right to protect yourself with the Second Amendment. That's a big deal. The Supreme Court justices. Next, severe drought. What do we call that? It happened not just in one year. This was over a series of years. Yes, the Dust Bowl. We showed you pictures how awful that was. FDR chats. He was able to use radio. He's a great communicator. He was able to use radio to have these, what do you call them, Elise? Fireside chats. He didn't have TV. A lot of people were heating their homes with their fireplace, and you sit by the fireplace and you tune in your radio and you listen real close, and there's the actual president of the United States talking to you, Jonathan. You're in a bad way, your family's suffering, but the president, showing he cares, is talking to you in your living room. The fiery dirigible, the Zeppelin, because it's made in Germany. This thing that exploded, the Hindenburg, we saw a video of that. FDR was the governor of this state before he became president. One of the major states in the Union, yep. New York. How many left? 2? Blank fair. Who can I pick on? Trey. What's that called? It means hands off in France. Basically, that's not the literal translation, but the government's idea before the 30s was, oh, we have a hands-off approach. It was called laissez-faire, Laissez, and the blank state building. Set. The Empire State Building, tallest building in the world for 40 plus years. Everybody ready? I'm confident in you, Dina. Dina, I'm confident in you. Are you confident in you?